Hello and welcome to yet another insightful edition of EdTech Mondays Africa. I'm Joy Bira. On this edition, we like to focus on last mile education and the collaborative solutions for young marginalized communities, and we take you to Kakuma Refugee Settlement, where we explore collaboration between governments, humanitarian organizations, education stakeholders and communities on how we can create inclusive and resilient education ecosystems. And we'll be hosting this edition with a very talented young lady. Her name is Nira Ismail, who is also a refugee based in Kakuma Refugee Settlement.
Thank you for having me, Joy. It is a pleasure to co-host this special edition of EdTech Mondays Africa. My name is Nira Ismail. I am a Sudanese refugee residing in Kakuma Refugee Camp. And in today's special edition, we're going to talk to the youth, learn about the education experience in Kakuma, what they think is working, what is not working, where do we need to improve. And I cannot wait to listen to their opinions.
Thank you very much, Nira. And it is a pleasure having you on this edition. Now, Kakuma, a refugee settlement with people from over 20 nationalities, represents last-mile education environments where access, quality, and continuity are constrained by teacher shortages, overcrowded classrooms, disrupted and non-linear journeys, among others. While these environments are testing grounds for technology-enabled, community-driven education models that offer critical lessons for inclusive education, they also provide valuable insights into building more resilient and adaptable education systems. These communities, however, continue to benefit from addressing acute teacher shortages, providing safer learning pathways for girls, ensuring continuity for refugees, and offering specialized support for children with disabilities. We traveled to Kakuma for a deep dive on what exactly is going on there. Let's begin with a story of Vincent, a young refugee who shares about access to education in the settlement.
My school journey is contributing significantly to my dreams. I want to be a leader who can be remembered for legacy, who can be remembered for equality, who can be remembered for inclusivity, and who can always be remembered for development and change among our students. I think leadership from this delicate stage enables me to practice and gain that confidence, gain that superiority, and even gain this little experience from a delicate stage.
Students in the camp are unique. They have their own unique strengths and unique challenges. And focusing on this one student who is our school captain, that is Vincent, is a role model to so many learners, including even members of the student council, which he is heading, that is here in Kakuma Settlement Secondary. It comes out as a symbol of unity for so many learners in the camp, and equally just a good example of the great potential that is in the camp schools in terms of abilities and talents.
My mind is always rotating on my situation, especially as a refugee. If we can take a look at the schools which are found in Kakuma Settlement, we only have 2 public secondary schools, which makes those who are from Village 3 to walk long distances like me. They will come to school very late, and others will even miss the first lesson, while others will feel exhausted and even give up. Others are also facing the challenges of overcrowding.
I teach almost up to 7 lessons per day, and even sometimes you can teach 8, because when you try to look at the population of the learners and the teachers, so the ratio is quite very huge. We use some EdTech tools here, like tablets and a few desktop here. So the learners will always find themselves whenever they have extra classes, they just come, they borrow those tablets, and sometimes when the internet is not there, we upload a lot of offline content, so that by the time we don't have internet, they just come access the content, then they go with it.
Some of the jobs are not accommodated by the rich people because
We learn as we participate in different clubs in school. We have clubs like inclusivity, we have environmental club. These clubs and extracurricular activities help us have confidence in ourselves and believe that any of us can be able to do something which aligns with their career or their dreams.
Within our capabilities, there's a lot that we have done to make sure that we put them on the picture. They admire being here in a manner that they can even refer and say that there's a school somewhere that nurtured them to be the kind of boy they are in the community at the moment.
I hope to bring changes in different fields, especially in the field of livelihood. I want to be a leader who will be remembered for the good and the benefit of the people, despite their originality, despite their cultures, despite their beliefs, despite anything which can make us different from each other.
What a moving story there from Vincent in Kakuma Refugee Settlement. And it really does speak to the high potential that we have, especially among the young generation today, no matter the circumstances and no matter the environments and communities that they live in. Now, let's listen in to a conversation from young people in Kakuma who, just like Vincent, have something to say about their experiences, their lived experiences, the challenges, and the solutions that they're proposing to access to education for young people in communities that are marginalized, just like refugee settlements.
Today, I am joined with this amazing panelist of youths, and we're going to talk about how the learning experience has been in Kakuma and how it is currently advancing as it is in Kakuma Refugee Camp. On my far left is Git. She's currently working as a ICT community mobilizer at SAR Center. We have Alex here, who's working as the facilitator at Resilience Action International. We have Afaf, who is working as the solar installation facilitator at Okapi Green. And on my far right is Dennis, who is an amazing entrepreneur. I'm going to start with you, Dennis. How has your journey been in education?
I happen to have completed my primary and went to secondary education here in Kakuma, where I completed Form 1 up to Form 3. However, once I reached Form 3, I've noticed that most of the young people here in Kakuma, after completing their Form 4, they end up in the community because there is lack of access to jobs opportunity and access to pursue pathway in terms of going to university and some other courses. So I asked myself, like, now that I'm ready in Form 3, what if I completed my Form 4? Like, what will I be doing in the community? Will I just end up like any other young people who is already like have no jobs and are not even going forward with education? So I chose to do something different. I remember I decided to take some 1 year off from pursuing my high school education because I wanted to try to learn some digital skill, try to learn how I can present myself, how I can pitch my idea, how I can know how to write an email, those just basic skills. However, after completing the program, I've noticed some changes in me personally because as part of the program, there's something they call PIP, a personal interest projects, where students are challenged to develop projects that they're really passionate about. And this is time of the thing that I was really looking for because I feel like the current educational system that we have does not prepare students for such kind of pathway. However, after completing this program now, I decided now I'm going to do something different in my life and the people around me.
I was supposed to join Form 1, so I had to stay at home for 2 months without joining the school because there was introduction of paying school fees by that time. So my parents did afford that. And it was frustrating me at home seeing my classmate going to school and me left behind. So it was hard for me. So that doesn't define. I proceed and completed my secondary school. After completing, I didn't see a straight map to my career achievement. So I had to join computer basics. One of my colleagues there told me that there's an opportunity for only girls at SAR Center, which is digital training. So I was much interested because of the skills and the confidence I had. I was much interested in the opportunity to go and also mobilize other ladies, mobilize other girls to come and experience what the technology is and how to earn online is.
For me, it wasn't that easy also because I come from the Democratic Republic of DRC Congo. We are in a French program curriculum. So it was a little bit tricky coming from a French program and you just come in an English country. So I was having English barriers. So in 2022, when I was still in the reception center, I had to go and train myself about English courses. So even this little English that I'm talking right now, I got it here.
Coming to you, Afaf, you are now working as a facilitator, solar installation. And I must say that this is not a job or an employment that a lot of girls and women take up in Kakuma. What led you? How has it been like until you're here working as a solar installation facilitator?
I arrived in Kakuma refugee camp, speaking only Arabic and my native language, which is Anya. So I had the language barriers. So it was difficult for me to speak or communicate with my fellow pupils back in primary school, but I tried my best. And I learned that little English until I finished my standard 8. So after finishing my primary school, I had to join Greenlight. That's when they introduced the payment, and also they redacted other subjects. So after completing my Form 4 successfully, I joined Don Bosco for 6 months, computer basic. So after that, I saw it's not that enough. So I had to go to Savi and take more courses there. I started first with graphic design and web designing. In 2023, that's when Okapi Green was introduced. Solar installation and maintenance is only for men, so I can't manage that one. But she forced me and she encouraged me, so I had to join it. And it was a 3-month course. Upon completion of the course, I applied for attachment. So they gave me 3-month period of attachment. So after that, I got a chance to work at Okapi Green and facilitating and empowering young men and women, and also the host community.
The fact that you're not only depending on one source and you sort of went and looked for another source of income is very commendable. I'm going to come to Gith. You have studied here since class 5 and all the way up to now you working as an ICT community mobilizer. What would you say are some of the challenges that you've experienced during your journey in high school, in primary school, in accessing other forms of education outside high school?
The learning was a half of the day. It's not full time. That's one of the challenges I faced. Learning materials was not enough, was not even there. So in school, they are not sufficient to every student. You may read in the classroom, then they will be returned to the office.
Were your challenges the same as what Git has shared, and what are some of the support that you feel like you would have needed during that time?
Okay, since we are the same cohort, so I would have preferred, at least at that time, there's a difference between being in day school and being at boarding school. So boarding school students, at least they do perform better more than the day school. That is because they have enough time, as she said, and also enough resources like books and reading materials.
I'm going to come to Alex now. I mean, your inspiration, you came from a country that doesn't speak English and you've done so much. What inspired you? What forced you to take that step into going back to the class, learning about English and learning all these other courses that have gotten you to where you are?
I left Congo before coming here when I was in my first year in the campus learning about computer science. Then when I came here, I just came to realize if I'm not taking any course, those ones whom I left behind in 3 years, 4 years to come, they're going to be somewhere. That's why I had now to learn English, because there's no any other course that you can take here in camp without knowing English.
Coming to technology and the education system in Kakuma, you had talked about incorporating tech into the education system in Kakuma. How do you envision that to work? And also, why do you think it's important for us to go that route?
Right now, there are so many students who have already graduated from secondary education, but they cannot design a basic thing such as CV online. So I feel like if these students are equipped with digital school, they will be able in a way that they can even apply for pathway because there are so many opportunities online currently. So if they learn this skill from their high school, by the time they are graduating, they will be in a very good position of applying for so many pathway opportunity, apply for jobs and so many other things.
Coming to you, Afaf, I mean, you joined high school at a time where now everything changed and you have to pay a certain fee for you to be able to advance. If you could change one thing about the education system or what you went through back then, what would it be and why?
Payment of the school fee.
Why?
Because not everyone can afford that as a refugees, yeah? There's those family depending only on UNHCR. So others can afford to pay that school fee. So they are left behind and they can stay at home because of that.
Coming to you, Keith, in the next 5 years, where do you hope the education of Kakuma should look like? Where do you hope it will be?
In 5 years, the indication in Kakuma should be more of digital by providing them laptops and with students to be taught well on how to use those things, and also the teachers to be trained better, be given a qualities knowledge on how to give them that knowledge to the young people also.
With all these challenges that we've seen with your experience in education in Kakuma, what is your advice? What is your recommendation to policymakers, to government organizations, to entities in Kakuma to sort of advance and take us to the next level in education?
As day goes on, we are being told that we should work on gender balance. But as it comes, it's not again gender balance. It has again exceeded. But beside that, beside being equalized, our education system has to bring more of learning materials. People who are even learning digital skills, after learning those digital skills, they're even not even enough for you to get even a job. Even if they're not enough, if we are being provided with materials, we can even work on ourselves by doing practicals until we get the job. We'll be perfect on that.
I will encourage them to look at the current intervention that's currently working here in the camp, and as well looks at the programs such as I mentioned, the Global Secondary Diploma. That's, I believe for me, it worked because it has personally impacted my life. So I feel like they should look for such kind of program and look for some partner that can give the program accreditation, because for instance this GSD program is accredited by the UK, CIS in the UK, which is the European body for accreditations. However, I would really love it being accredited also in Kenya, because so far we have over 3 of our students have gone to study in different places in the UK and Canada. So I feel like if given that accreditation here in Kenya, most of the students may get access to go to this university here.
There are many opportunities in Kakuma, so you don't need to stay there relaxing that they will come for you. You need to seek for them. You need to seek for the opportunity that will bridge your way forward. Do not take this opportunity as something which are not important. They are very important to the young people. Many young people have changed their life through this digital skill that they have gained.
Thank you so much to my panelists. It's been amazing learning from you and listening to your experiences. Back to you, Doreen, in the studio.
Thank you so much, Nira. And indeed, it's been exciting just listening in to the young people there. They've got the potential. But by listening to young people and drawing from the lived experiences of learners in Kakuma Refugee Settlement, where the gaps remain and what it will take to ensure every learner has access to meaningful, quality education, that's where the catch is. So allow me now to introduce a panel of experts to bring this whole discussion home. Satish Nanduri, who is the head of sub-office UNHCR Kakuma in Kenya, and Richard Ombina, who is the manager, Dream Refugee-Led Organization Opportunity Fund at the World University Service of Canada. We've heard the young people, and I believe you and I will agree that there's so much that needs to be done to help young people access education that really does speak to the skills of today, the 21st century skills that we're all talking about. But what are the most pressing education challenges facing learners in Kakuma today? Nando, if you allow me to start with you.
First of all, as UNHCR, and we are very grateful to the government of Kenya for having children, refugee children, to access the school. So they have the most progressive policies, including the Refugee Act 2021, and then the Sharika plan at Kakuma level. We call it as Kalobe Integrated Socio-Economic Development Plan, which actually allows refugee children and the learners actually to access the schools. So actually this supports creating that policy level enabling enrollment here in Kakuma, but also across in Kenya as well, I think, which is very important to note. And then as there are 140,000 refugee learners from the refugee community here in Kakuma, but we have only 90,000 of them are actually in the schools, or 95,000. So we still have 25,000 who are out of school. I think that's one of the key challenges. That's what I would like to start from is there are children who are not still in the school. How the organizations, plus together with the support from the government, ensure that they have access to quality education in Kakuma as well. Of course, it was very great to listening to the amazing panel before, particularly Gate, Afaf, and the colleagues as well, particularly mentioning on the key challenges, and also the student from the Columbia Secondary School, Vincent. I think he actually pointed out the challenges that are there in the secondary school or the primary schools here in Kakuma, the schools in Kakuma municipality. The challenge is, of course, there is a teachers-student ratio, which is at 1:70 currently. There are overcrowded classrooms, and there is a lack of infrastructure facilities within the schools so that the students have an enabling learning environment. I'm speaking about very infrastructure in terms of the classrooms and the infrastructure therein, but also the other digital infrastructure that actually prepares them for this century, or the today's growing demand for the digital technology, and which is part of the curriculum as well. Second, it's not about getting children into the school, but how do we ensure that they remain in the school, they successfully go through the education system, and then as I think me was mentioning, how do we find sustainable pathways for them so that they become self-reliant going forward? I think that is one of the key challenges. Maintaining that continuity from the beginning of the school and entering into the school, and walk through the entire education system, complete that Form 3, Form 4, and then from there graduate, and then find an opportunity, and then pursue then the higher education, the university education. How do you find that? I think that's one of the key challenges, because then it relates to multidimensional factors that you see, which is related to the poverty. That's one of the thing, which one of the colleague on the panel was mentioning, and the school fees as well, which currently it's supported by the donors. We are very grateful to the international community as well, to all the donors who actually provide that support so that the refugee learners have access to this quality education in all the schools as well. So these are the two structural challenges that we have. But then there is also one thing: government has now allowed refugees to be part of the national education system. They're enrolled into the national education management information system. We are also looking at in 55 schools in Kakuma how they can become public schools. Now we have primary schools, secondary schools, and under the early ECD as well. Then how can they become the public schools? And we are very grateful to the Ministry of Education, who came here on assessment actually to see whether how to actually then transition the schools from camp-based schools into a public school. Then it would also get funding. And then there is one of the colleague on the panel was mentioning the students and the learners who has the skills. How could we actually recognize these skills so they could apply? And recently we have the Kenya National Qualification Authority here, which came together with the Tibet authorities to do the recognition of the prior learning program for the refugee students as well. But these are the things that are happening now. These were the structural challenges we had, but then we see also a progress that's being made through these progressive policies. But there is also reduced funding towards the humanitarian organizations who are supporting the education as well. But I also note that there is also a development financing, particularly funded through the World Bank program under the KPIL and the SECIP secondary education program, which is also bringing the systems change. But this all takes around 3 to 4 years, to see the results that are going to come in. But the first three challenges I have noted, these are the key challenges that we are looking into. The lack of the learning materials for the children as well. That's one of the key issues. And then there is digital connectivity, but how do we embrace to ensure that every child has access to the digital connectivity and the digital inclusion, leaving no one behind?
Funding shortage, and that in itself speaks to, in part, donor fatigue that we are increasingly seeing around the globe as well when it comes to supporting young people in refugee settlements. But I just want to come to Richard now. Richard, technology plays a huge role, especially on the enabling side. But how do you think we can improve access, continuity, and the quality of learning for young people like Afaf and Nira and those that are coming after them?
One of the challenges that we see within the educations in the camps is around the large classrooms, and this speaks to the number of resources that are also given to the learners who are within these classrooms. We've seen classrooms that hold as many as 200 participants, and at the end of the day, they are sharing resources, including textbooks. And an opportunity here is technology is able to address some of these challenges that they face. For instance, within a classroom that you have 200 students, they might be sharing about 20 or 30 textbooks. But then with the introduction of the tablets, the computer labs, these students are able to gain access to digital content, which is relatively cheap, because what you do is just get access to the digitized material, and then this is access through the number of devices that you have, improving the issue around access. He also mentioned issues around the number of schools being within the Kakuma settlement, and also to bridge this gap, technology also addresses some of these challenges around the number of institutions that are placed there. We have institutions that are online, and you had one of the panelists speak around them coming from a different country and having to speak a different language. So as I speak around continuity, it will be good that technology is able to address this. For instance, if you are within your country of origin and you relocate to Kenya, and you still had credentials on the online platforms that you are learning from there, you're able to log into the different platforms that are available from the comfort of your home and still continue with learning. Quite a number of participants speak around competing priorities. For instance, you need to go to class, but at the end of the day, you also need to do some household chores. And technology has made it possible for you to be able to set some time aside. You can read, you can pause, and then you can still come back tomorrow and continue with your education where you perhaps left from the previous day. Technology has made it possible also in terms of accessing pre-recorded material. For instance, you do not have maybe connectivity today, but then tomorrow you're able to log in online and still access material that was recorded maybe 2 or 3 days ago. One of the panelists mentioned that there are about 23 different nationalities within Kakuma and Kakuma. So technology has enabled it easy for even teachers and different institutions to localize content so that it speaks to the different audiences that are within the camp. And one of the things that I see really supporting teachers in classroom is the aspect of adaptive learning. You realize that not all students are the same. Not all students have the same capacity in terms of learning. There are those who are slow learners. We have those who are fast learners. And at the end of the day, technology has made it possible for content to be adaptable to this kind of slow learners and those who are able to fast learn in a fast manner. And this also speaks to the level of assessments that are done within the teachers in the classrooms. In a traditional classroom, you'd have to give questions on a blackboard, and then they take the questions maybe home, and then at the end of the day, you have to mark the books. But through technology, they're able to assess the students based on their how fast they're learning, how fast they're responding to questions. And they can be able to customize even the learning pathways for these different students.
You've been doing this work for quite some time, and I can easily tell, that you're able to point out the opportunities very easily. But what are the limitations? Because we're talking about young people who don't usually get these opportunities like you're speaking to them. If all things were square, all of what you've said would actually make sense to them. But what are the limitations, having worked in Kakuma Refugee Settlement?
quite a number, and I'm happy Nando had alluded to some of these, and we are talking about infrastructure. Let us assume that an institution needs to set up a technology-enabled learning environment, and you realize the two main cost drivers for this would be internet connection and then the power source that is being used there. So one is not all areas within the settlements are covered with the national grid electricity. So this means that it's either unreliable supply, or then you have to tap into either solar energy or use some source of fuel, either diesel or petrol, which in the recent past, the prices have really skyrocketed. It also questions the issue around sustainability of the model that you'll decide to use, whether it's solar power or it's fuel generators that you'll run. There are issues around cost of maintenance. There are issues around spare parts. If you want to really get some good spare parts, maybe you have to travel all the way to Nairobi to get some of this. We talk about even when you speak about connectivity, there are data costs that are associated with this. It's not cheap, and at the end of the day, you're trying to balance between making ends meet at the end of the day, or are you going to purchase data for connectivity? There really needs to be some thought that goes into sustainability, whether you're using solar energy, whether you'll use fuel generators, and whether you will use some of the internet service providers that are there. But you also need to look into the context realities in terms of climatic conditions. When it's too windy, sometimes internet is cut short. When it's too cloudy, sometimes also connectivity is also an issue. So it's looking at all contributing factors that will affect connectivity as you set up, and trying to choose what best fits your need, as well as also trying to look at the conversation around reducing the carbon footprint. So if you choose fossil fuels, then it's also a question: are you doing more good, or are you doing some form of harm?
I would like to bring us back into the 25,000 out-of-school learners that Nando talked about, because that's where really the question really is, or the crux of it really is. And from where you sit and the work that you're doing, how do we make sure that we're improving learning opportunities? What are we doing from the different organizations that we're working with, or agencies we're working with, to make sure that we're moving these 25,000 learners who are out of school back into the education ecosystem, enabled by technology?
Every child should have an access to quality education. Right? I think it's very quite worrying, concerning to see 25,000 plus people are still out of school. I think we are working together with all the organizations, all the stakeholders, particularly including with the government, to have the campaigns and the sensitization among the community. But it's not because they don't know how to go to the school, it's also why they are not going to the school. I think that is the biggest challenge that I think we need to look into, is particularly related to their not the living conditions, whether they're in a position to afford to go to the school and walk a bit of the distance. I think that's okay, but then how they are going to sustain towards the entire 1 to 11th or 13th standard, the entire education, because it's not that it's free of education is free in Kenya in public schools, and now you pay a very nominal fees as well. Of course, we support through the scholarship programs. We are encouraging actually the students, all the sensitization, including through the different social media channels, but also speaking to the refugee elders and the leaders, particularly including from the women leaders and the women chairmen, and then the community and the students themselves. What are the structural challenges they are facing to access the school? How can we support together with the organizations and as part of the government agenda as well, to ensure that each child actually can go to the school? Of course, there is a lot needs to be done, because the issue is that it also deals with a bit of the poverty dynamics, as I mentioned earlier. It's about because they can't earn a living, so then their children are it's a child labor. And let me put it this way, they actually are then involved in other jobs and households where they can actually support the mother and father, but also support with the family to keep a bread on the table towards end. So that's what we see, but that's why the structural issues needs to be added. That's why education is linked to all the other sectors as well. If a person becomes self-reliant, a family becomes self-reliant, then the family children can actually go to the school. So focus with the organizations is addressing the root causes, but while ensuring the sensitization, mobilization with the community goes on, and then give a bit of incentives and all this for the children go to the school. But still, I think addressing the root cause is one of the biggest challenge. I think that will enable every child in Kakuma to have quality education as well.
If you go back to Vincent's story, Vincent's story actually gives us a deeper insight, because we don't just have learners who are not making it to primary school. We have learners who are not crossing over into secondary education, and that affects their pathways to work in the long term. But Richard, I want to hear your thoughts as well.
One of the things that we really need to ask ourselves is around the capacity, and this is the capacity of the institutions, the capacity of the teachers. So as we even want to bring more students to school, and as we seek to transition them, we need to ask ourselves, what do we need to put in place? And this really needs to speak around the large classrooms. How do we deconstruct that so that at the end of the day we are having quality being channeled out of these classrooms? The other thing we need to look into is in terms of the capacity of the teachers to deliver the trainings. Do they have the right skills to even transition this youth through training? What is required for them? Is it additional skills? Is it retooling? Is it some form of psychosocial support? At the end of the day, you have interfaced, and you had one teacher mention that they have 7 to 8 lessons. So at the end of the day, you're also tired. How do we now work in terms of increasing the number of teachers, increasing their capacity, and also just being able to see them get some form of psychosocial support when it comes to even reducing the stress levels that they go through on a day-to-day basis?
If, say, we had a blank check and we had the power to influence change in these settlements and enable last mile education to learners in marginalized communities, what would be your top 2 priorities?
It is to work with the government to support so that the public education is accessed, because it's government prime responsible to provide that equitable services both for the refugees and the host communities. So I think it's first to support the government to ensure that there is a gradual transition from the parallel system that has been established. So move towards a more sustainable and the government-led system delivery. So that includes, as Richard has mentioned, the Teacher Service Commission, and plays a very critical role to bring in the teachers, qualified teachers, and adding teachers as well, an RPL recognition of prior learning program. So for me, it's more important to actually invest in the systems that could help actually to take out all the structural barriers. That's one there. So that's a top priority in terms of going forward. Government has a transition plan, Ministry of Education, then also from the Sharika plan to KISSDEP as well, how to transition, move away from the parallel systems gradually to the government-led systems. I think that should be a top priority. That will be a top priority going forward. Second is then to look into how to ensure, as I mentioned, it's not entering to how to ensure that sustainable, that they continue to through the education system, then they create sustainable pathways for them to get a sustainable economic opportunity to become more self-reliant. So it has to be work from the 2 angles. One is from the system side, one is from the structural side within the community, so that they come together. Of course, then when I speak about the systems, it also includes all the digital systems, and because Kenya has a CBE curriculum, which is actually taught in the schools. It also includes part of the digital thing. Of course, there are challenges in terms of the infrastructure, digital infrastructure, but addressing the system, I think, in the long run, could also benefit from the national education programs that are there, that could be them coming to the current schools here in Kakuma, equally in other side as well, in Jadab and other places. But this will be the 2 where we can bring all the stakeholders to work to support the systems and address the structural issues within the community to become self-reliant.
For me, I think we really need to start at the community. The community needs to understand the need that if you have students who are staying at home, what is the barrier that is facing these participants from accessing school or accessing education? And then once that narrative is broken down, the other conversation that we need to address as implementing partners is see where can we come together and address these particular barriers that have been highlighted by these communities. If it's an aspect around the number of institutions that are there to support education learning outcomes, how can we also improve in terms of making these accessible? If it is resources that are required to facilitate learning, what are these resources and how can we come together and leverage on the synergies from each other? Remember, everyone within the education sector has a role to play. You might be doing teacher training, another one might be establishing schools. Another one might have access to resources to facilitate learning. It could be textbook, it could be access to digital literature. And at the end of the day, there is someone else who's working around maybe providing psychosocial support or an aspect around providing extracurricular activities, which includes sports. So how do we all come together as implementing partners within the context, not necessarily duplicate the efforts, but leverage on the synergies that exist within each and every organization.
So more collaboration to better support for access to education. Thank you all so much for making time for this conversation. It's been really insightful hearing out, first of all, where the problem is and what the solution could be. And well, we've heard it from our panelists, from the young people, and also from Vincent, who we followed and tracked all the way to his school. There are quite a number of issues that stand out. Vincent did mention that there's need for more schools, more secondary schools in Kakuma Refugee Settlement to allow for more learners to enroll in education. And then when we moved on to the young panel, there was a suggestion to have access to digital tools and more digital literacy to allow or open up learning beyond the classroom or the four walls of the classroom. And then to our panelists here, who actually also did mention that we need to leverage the new technology tools that we have, but while at the same time also creating an enabling environment for young people, especially in the marginalized communities, to access education. So in terms of connectivity or digital infrastructure for that matter, that needs to be done, and also looking at technology-enabled learning, what solutions are available for these learners in those communities. Localized content could be one of the ways to increase access to education there, and looking at ways in which resources can be shared, collaboration for better education or better access to education, and supporting different agencies and organizations working with the government that creates this enabling environment to understand the issues on the ground. There was also the idea of policies. What policies do we have? Policy frameworks that support access or opening up access to education. The platforms are there, the opportunities are there. We just need better ways to collaborate and make this happen. And also thank you to Nira Ismail from Kakuma, who co-hosted this edition with me, from Vincent all the way to our young panelists and down to our expert panelists as well. Nira, what do you think?
It has been a pleasure co-hosting this and also talking to the youth, learning about their experiences in the education sector in Kakuma. And two things I've taken away from this conversation is that when we talk about education currently, we need to find a way to include technology into the education system in Kakuma. And secondly, when we talk about education, how do we translate what we've learned in the classroom into something that builds them, into something that, feeds into their livelihood and makes them self-reliant?
Thanks, Nira, and we look forward to having you on the conversation yet again. From the rest of the team here on EdTech Mondays Africa, thank you all for tuning in. Until the next one, bye-bye for now.